My name is Tavia Watson. I am from Richland County, Columbia, South Carolina, living in North Charleston. I am employed with Origin SC, where I am a credit counseling housing manager as well as um, a lead worker there as well. So today, me and Mr. Paul have decided to come on to talk a little bit about wills.
Yes, ma'am. We want to talk about will. That's something that's very important that we seem to take for granted. Why is will so important in our lives?
To have a will is important because it's a legal document that kind of outlines what you want to happen after you are deceased, after you die. Your will is designed to create a pathway as to what you want your wishes to be once you have gone on and your family is back here to kind of take precedent over your property and your assets.
Now, I know that we just had this pandemic that went on last year, and a lot of people died that probably didn't have wills. So, what would possibly happen if you don't have a will to your property?
The question is always asked, how prepared can you be? If you don't have a will that's left to determine what happens, then your property, your asset will be in probate court. And what that means is probate court has to determine who gets what, whether it's a family member, whether it's a spouse or blood relative. How are they going to divvy out your asset or any property that you may have left after you've died?
I know we've heard a lot of arguments, fights goes on because of these wills that's been made up because of the families not getting what they want, the family member. How big is it of that paperwork?
It is very important to have a will. Oftentimes, if you don't have a will, it can cause a lot of confusion, heartaches, and pains between family members, just trying to disperse what is left. When you have a will, kind of outlines again what is definitely your plan after you have your time has expired here. So it kind of alleviate any problems between loved ones. It alleviate any malice. It kind of just brings home exactly what you wanted your wishes to be, and where you want it to go after you have died.
Is it hard to make a will or to get a will made?
It is not hard to make a will. I do agree that you should definitely consult with an attorney to have a will, so you can understand the process and having a will and how a will is designed to be carried out. You could talk. A will is very inexpensive, depending upon what's in the will, whether it's a living will, whether it's a trust. But at the end of the day, a will definitely should be in place with an attorney so it can be a legal document and filed properly.
I know you mentioned something about a trust. What's the difference between a will and a trust?
A will is, like I said, it's a document that's legal, is binding you to what you want to happen after you have died. A trust is more so a fiduciary relationship that you leave, and it can be formed whether you are when you're still living as well as your death. So what happens with the trust is, if you have any properties that you want to leave to someone, you put it in a trust fund and you have a trustee over that account, and then funds or property is dispersed as directed.
So, what are some of the conditions that must be formed when developing a will?
Some of the conditions is definitely your blood relatives. You have to take in consideration what asset, whether it's a savings, whether it's a property, whether it's a money market account. The deal with a will is to definitely be precise as to where you want what funds to go where. There could be a lot of difficulties deciphering between what you mean if it's not precisely written out, where an attorney is able to explain exactly where your wishes, what you wanted your wishes to be.
I know in some circumstances you may have more than one will because sometimes there's more than one family. You have there's that certain situation. Whereas the man may have another
Family.
correct, and so they may have a will, and then his wife or may have a will, and now when he dies, there may be some type of confusion. How is that settled?
Well, if you have several wills, or if you have a will um, that was written, and whatever the last will states, the last to date will be the will that is honored. Um, Typically, what happens with a will is once it's filed in court, the attorney, after your death, the attorney is able to read the will at any time. However, a will is public information where if it's filed in court, after a certain time, you're able to get a copy of the will and see exactly what it reads. Now, if the will is not outlined to be understood, then that's when it will be held up in probate court. Once it's filed and held up in probate court, it takes at least 8 to 12 months to decipher between how things would be dispersed and to act out the will accordingly. So then it'll be in the hand of probate to decide or make a decision as to where the funds should go or what should take place in reference to that will.
Okay, what about in a situation whereas who handles the funeral is described in the will? How would that be? As far as even the money situation.
It kind of depends on how the will is written. That's why it's always good to be precise. There is an estate planning as well. And in that estate planning is actually where one or two things happen. It kind of gives precedent over things when you are unable to make decisions. But if you have a will that outlines how you would like your funeral arrangements or how you would like things to be handled accordingly as far as your preparation for eternity, then that will has to be mandated and taken out as your wishes. So typically, what will happen is that will be read, and then from that point, wishes are to be granted upon whatever is in that will. Whether it's a funeral, whether it's who does the arrangements, how is it handled, who actually is going to be in charge. All of that should be outlined precisely in the will, so where it will be step by step with no inconsistencies or questions about it.
With something as important as a will, why do we procrastinate as far as having one done?
Well, when you're talking about death, it always brings awe because it's something that we do not want to talk about. We're not comfortable talking about it. Speaking of death leads to other death questions and other conversations. So a lot of people shy away from talking about their after plans, their plans after death, and um, what they want to happen once they leave. You have to be definitely comfortable in making those decisions. Um, but it is a conversation and it is a topic that I do feel that most families should start talking about so that it could eliminate a lot of confusion, um, a lot of issues between families, uh, and kind of just seal the gap between your wishes and well as what is going to happen after you have are deceased.
When a will isn't found, is there some circumstances whereas the state may come and take certain like property or stuff from that?
If a will is not found or if there is not a will, like I said, it is held up in probate. And probate has a process in where they determine the next kinship. Um, if that next person or the next kinship doesn't do what is needed, oftentimes that property could be awarded to the state and sold through probate um, as just state property from the state. So I do recommend that if you do not have a will and and family members are interested in knowing what their rights are, definitely seek the probate system so that you'll know what your rights are and know where you stand as it relates to what's due or what's owed to you from inheriting what was left.
I know we have a lot of children that they leave and they go to like other states and all that, and they're not really keeping up to date with other family members that in a certain location, and that death happens, and they kind of like just lose contact, and then that death happens. So how does someone be able to contact those next of kin?
A lot of that information is public record. If it's not recorded, there is where you could open a file to have it researched or investigated. Um, I definitely recommend getting resources as to what you can do if you're not connected or you're not familiar with um, the next kinship or how closely related or what you are able to obtain from a loved one that has passed on. Um, like I said, a lot of people don't realize that public records and records that's held in probate are for the public to kind of research and see where they are in line of like getting property or if there's any money that may they've been inherited. There is also websites that you can kind of go on and see if there's any monies left, unclaimed cash that you are not aware of as well. But you just have to familiarize yourself and ask questions and become familiar with what your rights are and what you can do um, to get what's rightfully yours.
I know that on some of the bigger cases of the wills, like some of the cases like Anna Nicole Smith.
Mm.
Now, there was a case where she left a lot of that money to her daughter. Then they had to determine who was the father of that child in order for, you know what I'm saying, in order for that person to be responsible for that child's.
Well, what I do know is that if you are a minor child and your parent, a loved one, passed away before you are the age of 18, your money is oftentimes your money is held in a trust where an agency about goals and plans for people who have received stimulus checks. One of the things that I do encourage is if you had a chance to get a stimulus check or get monies that's out of the norm of your regular paycheck, you have to look at your short goals, your long goals, and determine what is best for your stimulus check. I do recommend for you to pay down debt, make a big purchase that's going to benefit you in the long run. Not only that, save your stimulus check. Save your stimulus check for unexpected expenses, for a rainy day, for anything related to any goals that you may have financially. But best practice is to either save it, pay down debt, or make a big purchase that you're going to be able to see where your stimulus check went.
I know we hear this thing called FICA. That's the Fair Isaac Corporation. Called. And tell the audience a little bit about what that is and exactly how important that is in today's lending borrowing package.
Absolutely. So the FICO, it stands for Fair and Isaac Corporation. How they came up with the FICO scoring system is that two gentlemen from California, Mr. Fair and Mr. Isaac, developed this grading score system that would allow lenders to see exactly what a potential buyer credit looks like their character. This score basically reports to the three credit bureaus, which is Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Now, there are other grade and score systems. However, FICO is used more so because they take the mid score of all three credit bureaus and they use that score to determine what your actual FICO score is. There are other grading scales like a Vantage score, but FICO score is your score that you will use if you're purchasing a house or making a big purchase where they're able to look at all three scores for the credit bureau.
And when they look at your score, how does that determine how much you pay for that house?
They look at your credit in sense of, I would say, the 5 C's of credit. Character tells them a little bit about they don't know you, so they're trying to see your credit history. How well have you improved your credit? Then they look at capacity. How well are you able to pay back the credit? They look at collateral. Do you have any asset? Do you have any savings to cover this potential loan if you're trying to get credit? And then they also look at the conditions. What's in the community? What's in the area? What's around us that gives them opportunity to look at an interest rate? Now, as it relates to interest rates, the higher your credit score, the better it is as far as interest rate and being able to afford to pay back the loan that you have obtained from these lenders.
Now, do you feel like some of the companies use interest rates to fail you before you even made a purchase? I guess the reason why I'm saying that is that they make the interest so high.
It really depends on what product you're trying to purchase. There is a such thing as predatory lending, but there are laws that protect you from predatory lending as it relates to home loans. Now, if you're purchasing a car, that car dealer is more so trying to get more so a profit. So you have to pay close attention to the interest rates on what you're purchasing. If you have good credit or your credit is of a good score, then you can definitely anticipate having a lower interest rate. So mainly predatory lending are high-end credit card companies that charges a high interest rate. Definitely those companies related to check establishment places, title places, title max places. Those are where we call predatory lending. The interest rates on those loans can range from 300 to 500%. So we definitely encourage you to be cognizant as to what your credit score is, what your interest rate is, and also shop around. Don't just take the first offer that you have as it relates to purchasing a car or purchasing a home. You are able to shop around so that you can be able to get the best offer and what's affordable for you.
And is it good to know that when you're making payments on these items, like a car or something like that, you kind of like paying on the interest and on the principal? And can you explain a little bit about that and how that company is going to get some of that make of your payment?
Well, yes, when you're making a purchase, you do pay money on the principal as well as the interest. Now, you have to pay it on time in order to improve your credit. But when you're talking about interest, it's always good to pay a little more on the interest so that you can pay it down a little more, a little quicker, a little faster, and you would be able to have a little more wiggle room. So if you're making a big purchase and you want to either pay this account off early or increase your credit score, make sure you are paying a little more on the interest than just the minimum payment. If you're making a minimum payment, it does take a while to pay off loans and credit cards. So rule of thumb is to pay more on the interest, and you also have to identify that you are paying on the interest, because if you don't, they will definitely apply it to the principal payment.
And what does that do as far as them just putting it on the principal or interest? What difference does that make?
The principal is typically just the loan itself. The interest is how the company makes money. So if you pay down the interest, you're actually paying down more money of, that you, for example, if you're borrowing $3,000 and the interest on that is 3.5%, every time that you are paying that account back or the money back, the interest accrues. So what happens is if you pay it down to where it's not accruing as much, then you kind of take care of the principal balance as well as the interest. Interest is going to accrue, but the key to it is if you pay it down a little more than just the bare minimum, then you will cut the interest in half, or pay a little more on it, so you won't be paying as much interest over the time frame of that loan.
How often should you check your credit score, and why don't you seek help in improving your credit score?
You can check your credit score or check your credit account by visiting www.annualcreditreport.com. You get one free credit report a year. Best interest, if you're using a credit improvement company who typically is either HUD approved or through the National Foundation of Credit Counseling, there is a fee attached. The fee could be anywhere from $20 to $65 in that range for checking your credit. It is good to check your credit at least, they say once a year. I say at least a little more, because identity theft and fraud is definitely out there. That is a clear way of showing that you have been a victim of identity theft or fraud. Meaning, if you check your credit and there's some discrepancy as to wrong information, wrong account information, wrong balances, you definitely have to dispute those things, because it shows that you may have been a victim of identity theft. And not only that, just to kind of know exactly where your score is, just to kind of know exactly what is needed what you may need to do to improve your credit score. Because once again, credit is definitely the key as it relates to, good credit is the key as it relates to making purchases, such as a car, a house, or major purchase that's going to take you a while to pay it off.
When searching for a credit counseling company, what are some of the questions you should be asking before you do that?
Credit, there is a difference between credit improvement and credit repair. One of the things that I will ask is, are you for-profit and nonprofit? You can also ask, are you accredited? Are you affiliated with any type of National Foundation of Credit Counselor, or are you affiliated under the terms of HUD policy? You can ask, how can the agency help you improve your credit, and get a precise measure as to what they do to assist you in improving your credit, whether it is doing an action plan, whether it is developing goals, or following you from beginning to end. A lot of people do not understand the terms of how to improve their credit, so it kind of start off as being Greek to them, and they don't know. So it's always best to have a reputable company who's able to assist you, walking you from hand in hand, not only just to tell you what you need to do, but to show you, to educate you, so that whenever it comes up again, you will be educated on the things to do, and not just someone verbally telling you what to do.
Ms. Watson, what inspired you to want to become a credit counselor?
Well, I have a bachelor's in education and a master's in counseling. And I feel that counseling is still in the area of human services, and my master's is in human service psychology and counseling. So I believe that any ability to help anyone reach their potential is where you are doing your job. My mission definitely is to reach back and help someone. And it's always good to know that you've tried your best to help someone, either home ownership, whether it's just improving the credit or just providing information for them. So I believe that whether it's credit counseling or just counseling in general, it all is in the need of helping someone else.
True or false? Can you compare repairing your credit to weight loss? You didn't gain your weight overnight, so you shouldn't expect to get your credit improved overnight.
When I'm doing a credit counseling session, I often tell my clients or my participants that your credit will improve in time. It takes the creditors at least 30 to 45 days to update the credit bureaus as it relates to your payment history, or whether your payment was late or if you paid that account on time. So if it takes 30 to 45 days for them to make just one acknowledgement that you paid your accounts, then it is going to take time. I think that in a nutshell, if you are really improving your credit and you're improving your credit the correct way, it should take you at least 60 to 90 days to see an improvement on your credit. So it takes time. I can't give you a definite time frame, but I will say as long as you stay afloat and definitely stay on what you're supposed to do as far as your action plan and your goals, you should see your credit improve rather fast.